Well, okay. Yeah, welcome everyone. This is the third session of Feminist in Solidarity. And we are a group of women, but we are also open to men joining us. It's not solely a women's group. So we aim to create a safe space
All
where
genders.
all genders, yeah, uh, and all types of sexual orientations as well. And we kind of aim to create a space where everybody can come and have a safe dialogue about the institution of patriarchy. And we chose Menon because we felt that we should go back to the basics of how uh, feminism is a school of thought, and we as the younger generation can take it forward in different contexts. So we thought that Menon would be a nice read to go back to the foundations of how what feminism means, what it construes of, and how we can rethink in contemporary times how feminism is. Also, touching upon the idea of um, private being political, or the personal being political, the famous feminist slogan. So the session is divided into two sections. The first is family, the second is body. And we'll have a discussion round after every session. So I request you all to make notes, or make a mental point to kind of share whatever you thought while the presenters are reading out the text for you. Also, I request the presenters to introduce yourselves before the session so that everybody knows you, and also give your own interpretation or your own personal experiences or something that you've seen or read, uh, to kind of connect with what Menon is saying. That is one of the aims of this session. uh, so me and Asawari will be introducing Menon, and following that, Pahul will be starting the session, after which we have Janvi, then Priyanshi, and Preeti is also there. Preeti is not yet in the meeting, so okay. So if she doesn't come, we'll skip and maybe we can take it later. Mm, okay. Asawari, what's wrong with your?
Yeah, I'm sorry that I have some network connection issue.
That's
So my internet was just going.
okay.
Yeah,
So I
so
introduce them. So why don't you introduce Nivedita Menon?
yeah, so Nivedita Menon. First, before I introduce her, I would like to recall the conversation that I had with you, Ujja, that we need to, talk about feminism and, a starter, like a starting point from somewhere. Like Nivedita Menon's text, it presents us with not just one feminism, not just one idea of feminism, but different kinds of feminism and different matlab, crossing all those borders. So that's why and the language is very simple. It's simple as in though she quotes different authors and different people, the language is extremely something which everyone can relate to and understand. So that is that. And Nivedita Menon, she briefly taught in Lady Shri Ram College, University of Delhi, and she's currently a professor in political science in Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. And yeah, she would what probably heightens her ability to see through the flawless nude makeup of our patriarchal culture is the fact that she was brought up in the Nair community of Kerala, which under her grandmother's generation was matrilineal. So that I think is a great way to talk about her in the beginning. What do you think, Turja?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, where she's coming from, it really matters, and kind of. But I think her ideas, I think she takes in a lot of examples from the current affairs throughout the book. She takes in examples from the laws that were passed and how they are biased towards women. She's taking in examples from different cases of maybe dowry, domestic violence, and there are so many contemporary examples that she kind of brings in when she's talking about certain issues. um, so I
Definitely, definitely. Case studies, ranging from case studies, law bills passed, or say literary references, or critiques of feminism itself.
yeah.
So there are different layers of what she's trying to say to in her book. So she's not giving you one definition. She's asking questions. So she says something very interesting. I had noted it somewhere that yeah, yeah, the new questions and new objects that she talks about. To see like a feminist is not to stabilize, it is to destabilize. The more we understand, the more our horizons shift. So I think that sets the ground for us to think. So destabilizing, questioning it. So that is the way I think we will set up a discourse here. Probably healthy arguments, I hope. Let's see.
So basically, I'm going to highlight a framework of what she kind of brings in. So she talks about this performance of certain prescribed rituals or cultural reproductions um, that kind of normalize certain gender roles and propagate the binary of male and female. And there is this untouched naturalness to it, and we accept it without questioning it. So she says, what is it to develop a feminist eye? It's to reveal the formatting function in the Microsoft Word file. So you
Yeah.
see that on the surface, it's all very smooth, very linear, very organized. But as soon as you touch the formatting surface, I mean, there's a lot of complex or algorithms underneath. So to develop a feminist eye is to unravel those kind of I don't know, structures that we accept so easily in the society. And also, I mean, she says that while we talk about, we readers of this book, we are in a privileged position rather than other classes, maybe the working classes or men, even men of working classes. So it's not about you know that feminism is for women, because there is, I think, there she brings in class also in feminism, and she brings in caste, and that is very interesting for me to look at. Also, I mean, she says that we an upper class woman, especially if I add a Hindu upper class woman, would enjoy certain privileges um, from a woman of a working class. But on the other hand, she again, uh, what she says that there are different contexts to it, and then she again can be marginalized within her community as well as outside, regardless of her class, caste, gender. And the biggest example of this is that there are certain, uh, ideas about a woman leading a factory, for example, where there are working class men and women working, and the woman's voice is not heard, even if she's from an upper class. So that is something that I felt is interesting in her analysis, because it's not just about women raising their voice, but equally she says that even for men, it has been really difficult. It's due to the
Definitely has.
patriarchy, like even men face a lot of ideas about how they can't express their emotions, they can't cry, and all of these things. And then she kind of asks us to resist homogenization and open up multiple possibilities, and kind of subvert this gendering of men and women, and the kind of internalization that kind of happens. Also, she talks about two kinds of ways in which patriarchy functions. The first is that um, it is internal to us, like men are supposed to wear a shirt and jeans and women are supposed to wear, these are like, some are internalized but some are violently also imposed. So
And also the fact that we are conscious about it sometimes, and sometimes it's very unconscious. It's just there, you know. So those things, and like all genders, like everyone, I think, is faced with this dilemma. And Menon, through her book, I started reading her day before. I read a thoda sa before, but I didn't go across it. I read it day before, and yesterday at night I almost went through the whole book furiously, and it was like a nightmare. It was like a nightmare. Spoiler alert, but it felt reality in front of me, and I don't know which was more scarier, the reality in the real world or in her book. So yeah.
I end up by the way Menon ends the introduction, that feminism is not a formal institution and feminism is for everybody, but at the same time she says that the it cannot be based on the achievements of isolated women. We cannot talk about Kalpana Chawla, we cannot talk about Sunita Williams, or maybe we cannot talk about Mayawati and we say that women are empowered. We cannot do that because feminism is not based on that. It is a school of ideology. So when she talks about women raising their voice, women or men raising their voice against patriarchy, she means to say that uh, it is not about politics. It is about the sense of continuing responsibility that we have to feel when we talk about these women, that it is not about achieving something big. It is about those little things that matter at your home, and also understanding the history which has produced them to fight them. So that is how Menon ends. So I pass it on to Pahul now, and Pahul will be covering the first two chapters, first two sections of the first chapter, family. So Pahul, please continue. Please take it over from here.
Am I audible?
Yes, Pahul.
Okay, thank you. Hello everyone, my name is Pahul. I'm from Jaipur, Rajasthan, and currently I'm pursuing my master degree in painting from MS University of Baroda. And I will be covering the first two topics in the first chapter, that is family. So Menon begins the first chapter with a statement that I find very peculiar, putting it in the Indian context, which is she begins with, if marriage is the end of life, how can it also be the goal of life? I find this statement especially thought provoking because the way Indian parents bring up their children by default as cisgendered and straight, and usually encourage them to yield to possess a particular life where marriage and children must be at the center of their lives, and having a family is equal to being settled in life, and it is a standard that most men and women also aspire to in the Indian society. With that, while Menon does question the traditionalist and patriarchal definitions of family and marriage in this chapter, she also foregrounds a very important question, especially in the light of the recent spat of violence against women, which is that why is there zero tolerance against individuals who do not seem to conform to gendered norms of looks and behavior? And why are these considered a breach of the society? So, for this chapter, Menon has titled it The Story of Moni, and begins with the story of this girl from West Bengal who was beaten and tortured for as the author quotes it, behaving like a boy. But Menon also adds that this was not the only dimension to this incident, as the violence was not only about her gender inappropriate looks or behavior, but it also stemmed from the fact that she had refused to give up a friendship with another married woman of the village. And while I can recount a similar incident that happened with a cousin of mine, was that cousin was much like a tomboy in her school days, and my aunt felt quite proud of the fact that her daughter was not interested in boys or interested in dating as such compared to her other daughter or cousins. But interestingly, when that cousin passed out from college and she was being considered a candidate for marriage, like my aunt was frowning and very, like, it was a very alarming fact for her that her daughter was still not interested in dating anyone and still not interested in marriage proposals that had come forward for her. For this, Menon again states that any relationship that does not appear to conform to the notions set in society, whether it be a homosexual relationship or an intercaste or an inter religious relationship, is seen as dissent, something that needs to be controlled and disciplined. And the very anxiety that comes with with these kind of dissent explores the fragility of such constructs. It happened in a conversation yesterday as well, where my sister had been asking me about feminists and solidarity and what today's discussion would be about. So, as I was explaining to her about today's session, my mother was quick to interrupt this session, saying that it was not something that would need such a long and thought out discourse. And what really bothered me was that she was very quick to dismiss whatever I was presenting to my sister as an argument, or when I was mentioning instances from the very examples that Menon had also mentioned in the book. She was very quick to set them aside and say that you need not need to engage in such a long discourse about these things or worry about these things as such. And what is also an important concern here is that this dissent seems to pose a threat to the conservation of a patrilineal descent, and then the hierarchy of the family. While the grasp of patriarchy and its effect of women are subtle in cases, violent in others, like in the case of Moni that Menon mentions in the starting of the chapter, all of them are unmistakably demeaning. While I was particularly fascinated by the author's look at our families and in her unraveling of the characteristic Indian family, she points out carefully with examples at how violently our families are actually bound together in their social order, particularly when she mentions this in particular instance from a Delhi High Court judgment in 1984, which said that the fundamental rights ensured to every Indian citizen by the Constitution were not really applicable to the family. Those very rights would have to stop at the door of the home. And even the judge added that letting fundamental rights into the family would be similar to letting a bull into a china shop. Because if every individual in the family were to be treated as a free and equal citizen, the family would collapse because it was a institution clearly based on hierarchies of age and gender. That is, an adult male would obviously and always be more powerful than an older female. And with that, the author also dissents with the traditional idea of the family as an institution that has a very specific legal identity, that it only considers a specific set of people who are related to each other in a specific way as a family. She also questions the wrong in understanding a non heterosexual couple, unmarried mothers, or a group of friends as a family. While family as an institution is only considered the patriarchal heterosexual family consisting of a man, his wife, and his children. I also really like this particular example that Menon takes from this Hindi film called Mrityudan, where two sisters are married into the same family. And after the elder sister goes away for a while and returns visibly pregnant, her sister questions her in shock, Didi kiska bacha hai? Like, whose child is it? And which is a very absurd question because the baby inside her body is obviously hers. But this absurd question makes perfect sense in a patriarchal society when it means to ask that whose caste will this child bear and whose property can he claim? While also in the movie, the character simply replies Mera, that the child is hers. And to be honest, Menon's statements about family and marriage also made me reflect on my own family background, and I was left wondering for explanations at some of her points, like the ever present policing that has been notoriously naturalized by the Indian pop culture and its enforcement at the hands of a rigid patriarchal society and a violent treatment of those who oppose it. Like she had been mentioning instances of the outbreak of public anger around Valentine's Day and verbal and physical attacks on couples or even families separating couples who had chosen inappropriate couples outside their caste. And this left me wondering about how close I am to a system that rejects the basic human will to love a person of choice. Even I had instances of a particular aunt and uncle who would sit in a balcony overlooking a garden next to their house because in the afternoon time many couples would visit the garden. And I recall a particular instance where my aunt would go had noticed a couple sitting in the garden, and she went to my uncle that saying that there's a new pair of tota and mena in the garden. And then both of them proceeded outside to sit and supervise that nothing objectionable was happening while that couple was meeting in the garden. With this, I do agree that even given this, like homosexuality and its acceptance is a far cry in a system that is so rigid when lifelong matches are concerned. They are made solely on socio-economic grounds by parties that are non-involved, even without the consent of the couples in many scenarios. And it actually clearly rings a bell with the title that Menon has chosen for the second segment of the chapter on family, which says that what does it have to do with love? Because it does always become about the socio-economic grounds, non-involved parties, and does not even consider the consent of the couple in many scenarios as well. Okay, so that's all.
Thank you, Pahul. Um, so anybody wants to share similar experiences are welcome. Okay, so I'll add something to what Pahul said. So there was once, it was a couple of years ago, I was roaming in a park with my boyfriend. We were holding hands, and we were just holding hands, nothing sexual in it. And this person comes and tells us, okay, something like, kahan ja rahe ho types, we were asked this question. And that really kind of felt bad. I don't know. I mean, also the question was addressed to the man and not me. So how, I don't know how the man would answer the question rather than me. Like, it was more like he's the one who is in charge here. And that felt, I don't know, that was also, uh, I don't know, patriarchal to ask him that question, particularly to stop him and ask the question. Uh, so yeah, that is my addition to it. So if there is no,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, Dinesh,
Urja, I would like to add on something.
right.
I was listening to the whole point, and I really like that how you people are perceiving and relating it to normal life and everyday life, I would say, and how the small examples are coming and we are talking. I really like the idea where she talked about this Bollywood uh, movie and she said, Kiska bacha hai? I really like to quote that thing, Kiska bacha hai? I would take it back more into the part where we are talking history, the history which is more at the time, that the time of Puranas and these things has been written in really like 2000 year back, more than 2000, it was not written. Before that also things were existing. There was a social system in India. There were people who were having a lifestyle. There was a society system at that time. So there was this beautiful book written about in Bengali, and I'm sorry that I cannot tell the name because that name was too. So there was this person who is gender studies. He's a professor of gender studies. He teach in Vishwa Bharati, and he's doing a good. He's basically he's not just a researcher. He's been teaching and taking researcher PhD student. He's been under him. So me, I was having a conversation because I always have a perspective that how should I see history and the present situation of our society together? What was actually there? Because I always believe that the different, different like the how the Britishers came and so many wars and things. They have been always changing the idea of nation, or you can say the changing the idea of society in India. So I was talking to him how the marriage system was there, like if we go in the past. So he just bring out that book out where the marriage system has been talked about. So he was saying that there was a very beautiful system before marriage system was there in India. There was no marriage system. The women were free. The women were free to choose whatever the partner they want, and it's not just that the partner in the sense of like whole life, partner in the sense of temporary time also. If they want to stay with a man for 3 months and they give birth to a child, she will hand over the child to the man and she is free to go back to someone else also. So there was no marriage system. So the women were not being asked that why you are doing this. So there's this story. It's completely a mythological story. I can't have the particular references. After that, the idea of Swamvar and there were 7 type of marriages entered. So earlier there was no idea of women getting married. This person brings the idea of marriage, and he divided it into 7 types, where he is explaining that how you should do marriage. And right now we are just sticking to one idea of marriage. So love marriage was also part of the history. Choosing your own boyfriend or husband was also part of the history. And there are certain other points, like if you physically find someone attractive, you can also have two partners, three partners, or more than that partners in your life. A woman was free to choose such things. But then the association cannot be cut off. She need to, if she have connected to one person, then she will be called wife of that and that person. So that association was there. So he divided those categories so that the child would be knowing that he belongs, that her mother name is this. Only in that context he channelized that. So this is the idea where I was thinking about Kiska Bacha Hai, because I remember these marriages and the association of child, how these systems were built up. So I just wanted to bring that, and I thought this would be really like interested to know how the idea of Kiska Bacha Hai came.
No, it is definitely interesting, and that whole scene, Madhuri Dixit being all naive and saying "Kiska bacha hai, Didi," and Shabana Azmi saying "Mera." So, it's something which is also written in the book that motherhood. She says is a biological fact. Fatherhood is a sociological fiction, right? So this thing creates anxiety, this aspect creates anxiety. And in mythology or in history, there have been various layers and understandings, different understandings of what a family is. And family has, I think it's now, sociologically speaking, it is an institution, and it is an institution with certain hierarchies also. Like probably say an adult man would have more right than a woman and a elderly lady. So these things are something which are brought about in this chapter. And family, looking at the basic, the most the place where we are surrounded, the web, the network, right? Yeah.
I really like to add that the idea where you spoke about the men and the old women having the rights. I
Yeah.
remember when in my childhood, I never had grandfather because my grandfather died when my father was 9 year old. I never saw my grandfather. But I still remember that my grandmother used to sit on a charpai and she would be holding a hookah and she would be sitting outside the house, showing the authority that she is the man of the house. Over here, it is also a part that she's saying men of the house. She's not saying
Ah,
women of the house.
ah.
So this is the words which I was hearing. So I have pointed out multiple times that she, even to show her power more equal to the man, she have to quote a man.
Right,
So this
right,
was
right.
again a point at which I was associating.
Definitely.
I think also this just came up in my mind when we were also talking about Moni and this behavior of a girl as a boy, like a tomboy. Many times this comes up as a kind of a defense mechanism. It works as a defense mechanism, as Dinesh also pointed out that the woman sits outside the house claiming to be the man of the house. So, a kind of a protective mechanism that works sometimes in psychology, to act as a man or a male person to, I don't know, subvert the dangers that are posed towards women and all these things. So it's a lot of psychological game as well. Many of our behaviors are compelled based on these psychological constructs and behaviors that we make. So with that, Janvi, why don't you start with the next section? Yes, sure.
Okay, so